What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Move Local podcast, brought to you by The Movement. My name is Dalton, and I'm super stoked to be back with another episode. Guys, if you're tuning in for the first time, thanks for joining us. Make sure you head over to your podcast platform and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming episodes. We got some fun guests lined up, so I don't want you guys to miss out on any of that. We're also posting these episodes on our YouTube channel, so you can see the video episode with the guests. So you can head over to the YouTube channel, check that out, so you don't miss out on any of that action. But I'm super stoked about my interview today. It's something I've been wanting to do for a really long time. It's the guy that makes me look super fresh with my haircuts. I'm super pumped to have Dre on from Andiamo. Dre,
how you doing, man?
Good
to
dude.
See you again.
Yeah.
In your familiar quarters for the haircut space. Yeah.
I know this place is much more than a haircut place, though. I would definitely say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love coming in here. It's something that makes me happy. It's funny, before I really got into like getting haircuts, like I don't think I ever got my first like real fade until I was like in my master's.
Oh, no way.
Like I never really went to the barbershop, but then my business partner Will, who you also have met, he was a big barbershop guy, and he convinced me. He's like, listen, he's like, you just gotta go, you gotta find a good barbershop and just enjoy the experience. And so I went to this place in London that I loved, and my barber there was great. And I was like, immediately I'm like, I see.
Yeah.
And now it's like something that I look forward to. And you know, that's kind of what led me to meeting you, was when I moved to Hamilton and I was in search of a new barber. And I tried a couple different places, and then I booked in with you when you were working back at the other place before you opened Andiamo, and that's kind of what, you know, brought me into this world. But yeah, it's a special time when you come into the barbershop.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's one of those things that a lot of people don't really put that much thought into. It kind of just happens in the subconscious, just experience-wise, going into the barbershop and being a part of that culture and stuff like that. But it's definitely a special place. I developed a career around it, and because I love it so much. So
yeah, and I would love to talk a little bit about that to start, is like what led you into the barber space, because I know that wasn't something that you were always doing, and something you picked up a lot later in life, what it seems like.
Yeah, so I started cutting hair when I was 28. I've always been the guy that had a lot of different jobs. I've never really thought of myself as, you know, I'm going to pick a lane right out of high school and just go for it and do that for the rest of my life. I wanted to experience different things, different workplaces, different environments, different teams, both for education purposes, because I wanted that kind of real world experience in different trades, but also because I wanted something that was going to land as far as how much enjoyment I was going to find from it. So I did everything from, you know, construction. I worked retail out of high school for a little bit, service, like hospitality, all that kind of stuff. I was with Apple for 6 years. That was probably my longest stint, or what I would call career progression that I would say. But I think all of those different things allowed me to accumulate these attributes that go so well and tie so well into being a barber and doing what we do. You know, you have the hospitality for customer service, you have Apple for customer service and team building and culture perspective, you have construction for work ethic. So it's all of those kind of things that go into being not only a good barber, but a good entrepreneur, a good business owner. And one day after I was essentially came home from a day of construction and feeling shitty and, you know, breaking my back, I was just talking to my wife, and I was like, you know what, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. She's like, well, what are you going to do? I don't know. I guess I'll have to figure it out. And my uncles were barbers and hairstylists. They owned Pure NV on Upper James there, and kind of by concession. And their father also was Santo in the picture behind my chair there, and he owned a barbershop called Santo's Barbershop on James Street in the 50s. So it was always kind of in the back of my mind, and I messed with it in high school a little bit, just like cleaning up my buddies and stuff like that. So like I held clippers, I used to cut my own hair and all that kind of stuff. So, and I've always really resonated with the culture of the barbershop. I was going to barbershop since I was a kid. Morris's Barbershop in Stony Creek, I still remember, you know, picking up my first Tussler magazine there and all that kind of stuff, right? And so I figured I would be well suited for it, and I decided to just do everything that I could to make it happen as quick as possible for me at that point.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, and it's interesting to hear like the story of working in many different industries. I could see how, not only from like an entrepreneur perspective and just like getting a vibe for like how you work and what your skill sets are, like just having interacted in so many different domains, I would imagine that makes it easier to connect with the variety of people that walk into these doors. Like, you're seeing entrepreneurs, I'm sure you're seeing like blue collar workers, you're seeing the whole spectrum. And I think it's good to be in the service-based industry when you're younger or interact with different demographics to really understand people.
For sure, 100%. And I say all the time to my barbers and myself, the first 10 minutes of an appointment, that kind of allows you an opportunity to judge somebody's character and see kind of what they're all about, so you can build a conversation and rapport around that service, right? So I think, like you said, having so many different experiences in so many different industries allows you to, open up that book to all of those different types of people, and it gives you kind of that a little bit of an edge on being able to read a person or read the room or read the culture of certain businesses when you're going in there for a service, right? So it's definitely a powerful skill to have brought on by different experiences and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear a bit about like, you get into cutting hair, you obviously build that skill, you're learning that, you're doing really well. You start working, I forget where you're working prior to open your own place, but what drove you to want to create your own space? Because there's a big difference between like being in the industry and working for someone and cutting hair, and then like launching your own business. And I think beyond that, like the unique style of what you've created here is very intentional. So I'd imagine there's some like reasons behind what was driving you to.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. Number one, like I said, I've been going to barbershops my whole life, and a variety of different types of barbershops, different styles of barbershops. I find that there are opportunities in many barbershops and within our culture that I kind of wanted to bring to the table with my own space. And we can kind of go into that a little bit later. But another reason is, I've always been really into mentorship and, teaching and education and, having somebody that is motivated under you and teaching them how to, perform both the skill and the service and how to be a leader. And I've always done really well with leadership. And I think when I was working at a shop that I didn't own, those opportunities didn't come to me, right? So I wanted to be that person for people. And one of the biggest reasons why I opened this space was because of that. So I can start mentoring others and having barbers that were a little bit less experienced here. And, now we have Tara, and she's our manager, and she's looking into more leadership roles and responsibilities. And, I've really enjoyed being able to mentor her up through that. And it just feels very fulfilling to me to be able to do that and have a team and organize a team, manage a team, and make sure that we're all on the same page and we build the culture that we want. And, the perspective of us is very positive, and I feel like being able to create that is pretty powerful. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be a business owner, kind of like outside of the general topic of being a barber. Being a business owner is that leadership perspective was very attractive to me. So, and other than that, yeah, I kind of wanted to change the culture a little bit and bring something a little bit different and wacky and funky, and maybe people looked at it and was like, what the hell are these guys doing? Just something for somebody to talk about, and that was really motivating to me. So I decided to jump on that.
Yeah, I love that. I think those are all great reasons. And like the mentorship aspect of it is cool, because that's something like as a business owner that I'm super passionate as well. And I think it's how you continue to evolve the profession, right? And like when I look at it from like a physio perspective with what we do, it's like I got into the profession because I was super stoked about what we could do. But I'm also always looking at how do we continue to build on what's already been done to continue to make what we do great, right?
Right.
And I think that's the cool part about like starting your own business. If you have a passion around that, you can cultivate and create your own thing, and
For
then
sure.
you can provide opportunities for people who maybe are looking for a similar opportunity, but they're not willing to, or don't have the means, or haven't really thought about creating it themselves.
Right.
And I think that's a really cool thing. And there's a lot of selflessness in that aspect of entrepreneurship.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And at the end of the day, like you said, like this is my vision, right? So everything that you see here was created by, my efforts and my creativity, and it was very well executed because of the team around me. So I think hiring the right people is and that's incredibly important, and a lot of people don't really realize that when they get into entrepreneurship is, they say we just need bodies and we need them to do the job like relatively well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just so powerful to have good people that you can rely on, you can depend on. When you have so many things going on and there's so many moving parts associated with what you're doing, it's like, who are you going to have in your corner that's going to execute your vision properly? And I think that is probably the most important aspect of what I've learned about entrepreneurship at this point, is just surrounding yourself with people that can execute your vision, the most efficiently, right?
Yeah, and I think a key thing to that is, as an entrepreneur, knowing and thinking about what that vision is and what those values are. And I know
Right.
you did that, a lot of that, just having had conversations with you over the years when you were leading into opening the business, and then even before you opened the business, when you were kind of telling me about doing your own thing. It's like you could clearly see that you thought deeply about like the vision of what Andiamo was, what you wanted to get out of it, the standards you guys wanted to have here. And I think when you as a business owner have that, then you are using those as the guiding light of who you're bringing on your team, so
Right.
that they can fulfill that to a high level, right?
Right.
So I think it also really starts with that too.
Yeah. And it's funny in the barber scene, in the culture, kind of, we have the opportunity with what we do, where I remember when I was thinking about this place and starting this business, it was during COVID and we were going through lockdowns. We couldn't really do anything. And a lot of the vision for this place came from conversations that I had with people in the chair, right? So it's like when I feel like when lockdown happened, transparency was a little bit higher. Like people were a little bit more vulnerable to chat, I guess, if that makes sense.
It's true, yeah.
And I was doing haircuts for people while this place was under construction, and it was like, we would just get into deep conversations about the barber shop and previous barber experiences, and what they liked, what they didn't like, and a lot of it too was the LGBTQ community and stuff like that, where I've had a lot of long-standing clients and friends now that have been coming to see me for years that are part of that community, and there's such a gap that needed to be filled in order for like inclusivity in this specific space for that, right? Which I found more and more by having conversations with people within that community. It's that, when you walk into a place and you just immediately don't feel comfortable there because of the culture, like it's just like, how do you even go about wanting to get a haircut at that point, right? So there's so many gaps that I feel in the industry and the culture that needed to be filled, and I feel like I was able to understand that a lot more by the expression of the people that I was already cutting, which was great, right? A lot of businesses don't really have that opportunity, so I definitely saw that as a huge advantage.
Yeah, it's cool because like the things that I thought about when I like walked into this place, and like when I come to get my haircut, is like it's a unique and welcoming space.
Yeah.
And so like, and I know that that's intentionally created by you. So like, to your point, like making it feel welcoming, making it feel inclusive, making it feel warm is something that you've intentionally done. And I would love to hear a little bit more about like the development of the uniqueness of Andiamo, and even just sitting in here looking at the space, like the colors and the coffee bar, and where we're sitting on the couch, like it's like a chill vibe. And then over there is where like you get your haircut.
Right.
It's kind of how I feel. So I would love to hear like what brought that together.
It's funny because I think I'm in a pretty unique situation, and I'm sure it's happened a bunch of times before where Apple employees start to become barbers or hairstylists or are big, plant themselves into the service industry in some respect. But I feel like Apple really nailed it, and they kind of hammered it into us about the experience-based service. When you walk into an Apple store, from the moment you enter that store, all the way to the back where you get technical support, it's kind of just like this very unique experience that doesn't feel like typical retail, right? You have people coming up, they're all bubbly and excited, and they're genuinely happy for you to be there. And I mean, depending on where you go, but that's typically the general standard. And I feel like coming from a world like that, it's like, okay, they were really adamant on rapport and relationship building, and essentially what they called building promoters. So with the experience that you receive within that space, who's going to walk out into the world and talk about your business?
Right.
And for what reasons, right? So what I chose to do here is, from the time you step into the door and you get greeted by our front of house to the time you're essentially paying $50 for a service, right? I can't justify having that be just for a haircut. I personally think that the market for barbershops right now is a little bit inflated for whatever reason. Could be a million different things, but I feel like for that price, you should be getting a standard of service that is just exceptional, right? And by service, I mean the entire experience, right? From the moment you're sitting down here, while you're sitting down here, what's going on? What are you looking at? How's the music? How's the energy from the barbers? How's the energy from the front of house? Are people having conversations? How's the decor? What's the lighting look like? Like everything that's incorporated into this space, I want to resonate with people while they're here. So then once they get their haircut and they leave, they can go, wow, like that was really worth it. Yeah. And I would do that again. And I'm going to tell my friends about that, right? Whereas if I just had a small room and, it wasn't very well lit, maybe like a lot of LEDs and ring lights everywhere, and I had nothing going on and I just had chairs and, you sat down, you're on your phone and you're kind of like waiting on being called up, like a number at a deli or something like that.
Yep.
Sit in the chair, don't have a conversation at all with your barber. He gives you an okay haircut, you leave $50 out the door. It's just, sure, you may like your haircut, could have been a good one, but I highly doubt you're going to tell your friends about that experience, right? So I think that the experience-based services that we offer are extremely important for A, client retention, and B, just organically creating relationships, right? So that's really important to me, and it's funny because I don't feel, when I look at it, I'm like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything particularly unique, but then when people come up to me and they tell me, they're just like, man, this is really different, this space, it kind of allows me to reflect, and I say, you know what, like I did do something a little bit different based on my knowledge from where I was at before, but it just doesn't, to me, it just feels like this should be the normal standard. Like this should just be normal, right? Your typical like barbershop hairstyling, like service experience, this should be it, right?
Yeah, no, it's cool, and there's a couple of things going, through my mind is like, the relationship idea is huge because I think of when I come here, and I got to give a shout out to Max because like
yes,
he is awesome.
He's awesome,
and like I've built a relationship with him, and I intentionally come here early
for sure
to talk to Max.
Yeah,
because like, and one, because he's not here as much anymore because he's got other things going on, but like I actually look forward to like, outside of coming here and getting a cut with you and catching up with you, like I really look forward to chatting with him and seeing how he's doing in his music career, and like, and all of those things are so important to creating an experience, and intentional in the sense that you're bringing on those type of people to elicit those types of responses. Now you're not like intentionally setting up these interactions; they're organically happening, but you're intentionally positioning people in that place to elicit that type of response, and that's a key thing.
100%, and I tell everybody there. I had somebody ask me a few weeks ago, so what's entailed in your hiring process when you're trying to find a new barber? And I say, I interview the person, I see what their job experience is and what their life experience is. But generally, at the end of the day, I'm sitting there having a conversation to see how we vibe, how I think they'll vibe with the team and our clients, and whether or not they are quickly able to build rapport with somebody, right? And they're like, well, what about the haircuts? I'm like, I don't give a shit about the haircuts at this point. You know what I mean? When I bring somebody on my team, I want to make sure that is nailed because we can teach the haircuts, right? And I think that's very important for somebody that's either building a barbershop or building a service-based business, is that hire people, don't hire skills.
Yeah.
Because you can teach skills.
Yeah.
You can't teach somebody how to be a good person, right? And with that, you'll find that the energy and the culture, even with your team, like we never have culture problems with our team, like never. Like they never complain about each other. Nobody ever talks shit about each other. You know what I mean? It's because we hire, you know, essentially personality-based people, right? And just like you said with Max, right? I hired Max based off of the type of person that he was. I didn't care that he worked at a cafe before or like whatever, right? He was referred to me based off of his cafe experience. But when I met him, I'm like, this guy's a great dude to chat with. I know he's going to be good with having conversations with customers. And I need him to be the representation of our brand.
Yeah.
Because he's the first person people talk to, right? So that's why I put him where he was. And yeah, like even in our reviews, like you see reviews of our barbers, and then you see reviews with like Max mentioned, right? And I think bringing Max on very early on, essentially like as soon as we opened our doors, that kind of like set the standard for me as well, right? So like the type of person that Max was, and the business that we've created around that personality and around the personality of the current barbers that we have, who are also great. That's my standard now, right? So moving forward, this is what I need to see. And we've gone through different front of houses and didn't particularly meet the standards and stuff like that, which is fine. But we're constantly looking for those people to create that engagement, to make people feel welcome, to make people feel like they're wanted here, not that they're like a nuisance to like that person that's on their 13th haircut of the day, right? And that's a big one.
I can see that happening for sure.
That's a huge one. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times people sit in my chair and they're like, oh man, like I can't, I just got a haircut last week, but like I felt really rushed, and the guy kind of seemed like he didn't really want to cut my hair. And I'm just like, dude, that sucks. You know what I mean? Like,
it's very, there's a lot of parallels to what we do in the physio industry. And like one thing I learned from a mentor early on is like, you know, you've been doing this all day. You've been seeing people all day, treating people all day. You've been cutting hair all day, but that moment for that person is a brand new moment.
Exactly.
And like you have an opportunity, not an opportunity, you have a duty and a responsibility to give that person that hour or whatever the time frame is, the best time that they can, regardless of your experience throughout the day, how tired you are.
I tell that to people all the time, man.
And when you slip on that, because like I learned this lesson from a mentor of mine because I slipped on that early on in my career, and he called me out on it, and you realize when you reflect back on it, like how that can impact the relationships, the business, all that kind of stuff. You know?
It's so funny. I was just having this conversation with one of our new barbers the other day about how every single service in your chair should be a consistent service in the respect of your energy, what you're bringing to that person as far as rapport goes, all of those things, like you said. They might be our 11th, 12th person of the day, but we might be the first person that they saw out of their day-to-day, whether that be their job or with their family or whatever. So now you're a refreshing face. You're a new person. This is a whole new ball game for them, right? Yeah. And I love how you touched on that too, because I'll probably keep referencing Apple a lot during this conversation. But when I was working there, I was a genius, which is essentially a technician, right? Everybody knows what like the Genius bar is. And we had an appointment every 15 minutes on the minute, right? And every single person that came in to see us was pissed off. Yeah. They weren't happy to be there, right? So what happened with that is I got really good at converting that person into a promoter in such a small amount of time, right? Yeah. And And if you think about it from the perspective of the technician, like that's mentally, like it's a lot, right?
Oh, yeah.
To deal with that consistently every 15 minutes. But what they preached was, they called it a reset, right? So if you had a particularly tough interaction, or somebody escalated or whatever, or even if you're just, you become complacent because of it's your 13th or 14th appointment or whatever of the day, kind of like going to the back, giving yourself a time to kind of like reflect, just kind of breathe, calm down, and always come out with a smile on your face, basically, right? Even if for the first little bit you have to fake it until you can actually build that initial connection, right? So that was heavily preached there, and it did wonders for the customer interactions and stuff like that, and I think that coming into this industry, I definitely transferred those skills over to this because they're so relatable, right? So that's huge. It's a big one.
Yeah, and I think as a person who's like, if someone's a barber or like working in that type of industry, it's like, it's okay to do that. And It's probably a good thing. Like I do that to this day. And like 100%. A lot of times, I'll between clients, especially when I'm back to back, like I'll go to the washroom, but like I'm really going to reset
100%.
And like try and like take a deep breath and just like focus on the next piece, because like you're coming off someone else who has who's got whatever going on, and you're trying to manage them, and then you're trying to think about this client that's coming in, and you're still dealing as a human with everything else that's going on in life. And like, it's a good thing to do, and it's probably going to save you and that client a lot when you do that kind of thing.
100%. And they get so much more from it because now they feel that you're fully invested in them, right? You're not kind of wearing the last appointment on your shoulder kind of thing, right? So it's a very powerful skill to have, to be able to efficiently reset for the next appointment. Totally.
Yeah. When it comes to business, we've been talking a lot about like culture and experience and all that kind of thing, but stepping into the business world, what have been some of like your bigger learning lessons when it comes to that? And that can be both in like the positive light and the negative light.
I feel like there were just so many different aspects of running a business that I was just completely unaware of, and just so inexperienced with, just generally like finances being one, right? Yeah. It's funny because it's kind of double-edged for me, right? Whereas all of the negative things associated with running a business, I kind of see as positive things, because entrepreneurs are in a very unique position where they learn to wear so many different hats that not every single person on this planet gets to wear.
Yeah.
Right? So like, if you're an accountant, you're an accountant, right? If you're a corporate lawyer, you're a corporate lawyer. If you are a, barber, you're a barber, right? Whereas as an entrepreneur, you get to kind of take a quick peek at, what does accounting look like? What does corporate law look like, right? What does it look like when I go to the city of Hamilton and apply for permits, right? Like, so you're wearing all those different hats, and you attain pretty generally, I guess, but you get to attain a certain level of skill and knowledge pertaining to certain industries, right? And I find that pretty powerful in a sense, because it's a unique opportunity, and it's grueling and it's heartbreaking at times, but I feel like whenever you're in a position where you can build skills that other people don't have an opportunity to build, you're doing okay.
Yeah, and you can definitely leverage that
for
later
sure
in your life, right? And that's what I've learned, and I think like I've really learned the skill, and it's ever evolving, but of problem solving, because it's just like you're constantly problem solving all day, whether it's like, how do I fix the cappuccino machine 100%. That broke today, or how do I make sure the
heater's not working or something? Yeah.
And so like it really teaches you the skill of problem solving, which I think is a valuable thing, and
that's a massive one.
Nothing is ever, in my mind now, it's like people are like, how do you deal with it? And I'm just like, at this point, I'm just like, I'll just figure it out.
Totally.
Because like that's just kind of what it is.
Yeah, and
that's weird.
And at first it ends up, every little thing seems massive.
Yeah.
Right? And then once you start becoming really good at problem solving, which I'm still not even close to being there. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's something that we're just going to perpetually be working on, right? But you get better at it. And once you do become better at it, it's more apparent, like you said, in your like persona and like the way that you handle things, right? Yeah. That's a good point to make. Yeah, for sure.
The one thing that I've learned, and honestly, I learned it a little bit through you. I can't remember the exact like dynamics of the story, but I think it was you were starting the business and you're trying to figure it all out, and then you had run into like another local business owner. I think it was someone who was like owned a restaurant, and like they like gave you so much help.
Totally.
They didn't have to. They opened their doors, they opened their hand to you, and like it really helped. And that story you told me really resonated with me about like, one, it's important to accept and ask for help.
Totally.
And then two, when I can offer help to someone else in the way that person had like offered help to you, it was like, oh, that's important to like
for sure.
Entrepreneurship and even more like specific like local business in Hamilton.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I totally agree. I'll kind of just briefly tell that story. So when I was opening the business, it was during COVID. There was lockdowns happening. Our 3-month build out projection turned into 6 months to 8 months. I was having issues with the city of Hamilton with the red tape because they're not the easiest to deal with. What happened was I lived on James and Barton at the time, and I was just kind of going for a walk. I think I had my son with me. He was in the stroller, and Vittorio from Born and Raised. We knew of each other at the time just because we've kind of been in like similar circles, and I lived downtown and, been to Born and Raised a lot, and he comes up to me, he's like, Dre, man, how's it going? And I'm like, I feel like he could tell I was stressed.
Sense
he
it,
could just see it, right? Like I was kind of like a walking billboard of anxiety at this point, right? And I was just like, you know what? I'm almost like at a point where I'm not going to be able to open and whatever, so I'm just going to lay it out for this guy and tell him what's up, right? And I'm just like, hey man, listen, like, he initially said, I heard you're opening a barber shop and whatever, how's that going? And I said, you know what, man, like, not going too great, like, I'm kind of over it. I was just being very vulnerable with him and very transparent. And he goes to me, he says, hey man, send me an email. Literally tell me verbatim everything that you told me in this conversation. He's like, I'm going to try to help you out. I said, okay. And at the time I was waiting on permits to be passed through and just the city of Hamilton to look at my submissions, right? And months, we're talking like 2 months without getting any correspondence or anything from them. And it was just a nightmare. And I sent him the email, and literally the week later, I had people coming in here for inspections, and the ball started to roll, right? And because I feel like he looked at me and looked at the position that I'm in, and he's like, "Shit, man, like I've been here."
Yeah.
And he's like, "But now, based on my experience, I have the resources to help this guy, right? Which is great because he utilized those to help me out. I'll be forever grateful for that." And he wanted nothing in return, man. Yeah. Nothing. It was just kind of a veteran entrepreneur helping this rookie entrepreneur get to where he needed to be. And I think I talked about this with Dan Guest on his podcast, and he said, I think the best thing you could have done for him at the time was just to be open.
Yeah.
He just wanted to see you be open, right? And he was willing to go through his effort and take his time and utilize his resources. And when you opened your doors, that was probably gratifying enough for him. Which is super powerful. I think that's great.
Yeah, it's cool, and it's cool to see how like things like that can spread so far.
Totally.
Into like impacting other people. Like 100%. That story has impacted me, which I know that's going to carry with you and impact
for
someone
sure.
else when you lend your hand. It's cool.
When I meet new entrepreneurs, new business owners, because of that, I do everything I can to help them out.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas I might not have been that person before. Yeah. Right. So it's that's definitely an experience that I'll never forget. Huge.
Before we transition into like just some fun rapid fire questions, I'd love to hear, and I know this is like a common question, like what are you hoping for in 5 years, that kind of thing, but like what is the continued vision for what you got going on with Andiamo? What do you hope to?
So right now, I feel like I'd like to get my team in a position where they just feel very fulfilled, both financially and just being within our culture and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that's the biggest priority moving forward, is just making sure that I'm setting them up for success best that I can. We were talking about this a little bit earlier off camera, but we're in a location right now where we're not very visible. So now my new barbers have to learn how to be business owners a little bit more than most barbershops on public facing streets. That coming from a marketing perspective.
Yeah.
Right? So they have to have their own Instagram presence. They have to build a brand around themselves, which is an amazing skill to have. It's probably the most important skill to have for what we do. But some of them are definitely struggling with that. And I'd like to kind of set them up with the resources to be able to be a little bit more proficient with that. And that's just going to take some time. Yeah. I think for the business, the most important thing for me is to make sure my team not only is set up for success, but feels comfortable here and, is happy being here.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what to tell you I can't tell you I want to make this much money in this amount of time.
No, that's why the question is always rigged. And it's interesting to hear you say that, because I feel like we're in a very similar space with our business, and the one thing that as an individual is always what's next? Where are we moving? How are we moving forward?
Yeah.
But what I've learned is that you got to focus on what's going on right now, and the patience of how long it does take to build that team's consistency
100%.
up, how long it does take to build up their skill set so they can start generating consistent people. That takes way longer than your brain wants it to.
For sure.
And instead of thinking about, okay, what can I do in the future? It's how can I continue to foster
Yeah, it's
that?
what do we have now?
Yeah.
And how can we, make it the most efficient and just do it the best, right, as possible with what we currently have, and before thinking about anything else is a big one. And I always say as far as financial success and all that kind of stuff that business owners kind of lose sleep about at night. I have a friend. His name's Kevin. He's a mortgage broker with Empire. I'll give him a shout out right now. And he's an incredible leader. I've always looked up to him from a leadership perspective. And we were having a conversation in the chair the other day. He came for a haircut, and we were kind of talking about how, your financial success and your personal success as an entrepreneur and as a business should be a byproduct of your team's success, right? And I think that's very powerful because, your business is only as successful as your team is.
Totally.
Right? So I think putting all of my focus and attention on my team right now and making sure that they're set up for success and they're doing well, in turn, I'm going to see that success down the road. It's a long-term play, right? But I'm not looking for, because, I'm probably you at the beginning too, you're always the last person to get paid in the room. Right? And when you're running your own business, right? You're dishing out your paychecks and the tip outs and all that kind of stuff, and then you look at your bank account and there's zero, right? and your money goes towards everything else, but it's that's kind of inevitable at the beginning phases of a business. So the best thing that you can do is focus on how do you make sure that your team is taken care of, because that creates sustainability and it creates longevity, right? And I think that's what I've been putting most of my focus on and paying the most attention to is that. Yeah,
that's key, especially, and this is what the whole podcast has been about, the culture, the focus of culture and the experience that you're trying to build here.
Yeah.
It's that comes from the team.
For sure.
And so in order to continue to generate
100%. And that's only going to make your life easier too, right? People are going to be bickering at each other. The culture is going to be spot on. You're going to genuinely enjoy coming to work every single day.
Totally.
Right? It's going to feel less hey, I'm coming in to babysit my team and try to make as much money as possible. You know what I mean? Which a lot of entrepreneurs lead with that perspective. I'm going to make sure that everybody's happy here. Everyone's set up for success. They're doing well so that they're happy to be here. And in turn, I am happy to be here.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a big one for sure.
Love it. All right, some rapid fire questions. I know you've lived your whole life in Hamilton, so I'm sure you got some interesting answers for this stuff.
Yeah, we'll see.
And probably a little biased in some sense. But what would be like one of your favorite local like coffee shops to go to?
I really like St. James. St. James is a really good one.
I've heard they have good breakfast sandwiches.
Yeah,
too.
that's why. Like their coffee's great. And their breakfast is spot on. When during COVID, they had this I think they still have it. It's a breakfast sandwich called the drive-through. It's like an egg. I think there's like either pea meal or bacon on it, and they have this like thick hash brown in the middle. Ooh, it's so good, man. But it's funny because St. James has been there for so long. They were like one of the first on James Street, and to this day, they're packed.
Yeah.
You walk in on like a Sunday at like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. There's like a lineup outside the door, right? So they're definitely one of my go-to places for both coffee and breakfast. Yeah.
What would be one of your favorite like local breweries?
Fairweather.
Yeah.
Oh man, Fairweather's doing things that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
They're not even just the creativity of their beers themselves, but it's funny because we sell craft here, right? So what that entails is we have correspondence with suppliers, and we go to the breweries and we try their product, and they bring samples and all that kind of stuff. I think what Fairweather does very well, extremely well, and this doesn't even have to do with their beer or their product. They have nailed it, and they fully understand how to build a community around their brand, and that comes from what resonates with me the most is their team, right? We were dealing with, whenever your typical kind of supplier will email you and be like, hey, here's the beer list for this week. Like, put in your orders. You'll send it in an order, and they'll be like, okay, see, we'll be there on Wednesday, or somebody will be there on Wednesday. It's usually like a courier or something like that. Whereas, like, you email Fairweather, and you're dealing with one guy, and that's Tom, right? And you order beer from Tom, and Tom shows up with your beer, right? And he sits here and he has conversations with you, and it's just such a personable experience. And on top of that, their beer is phenomenal. It's just, I've never had a beer there that I didn't like. Yeah. Even beers that I don't typically like sours and stuff like that, I thoroughly enjoy them, right? Yeah. So Fairweather by far has nailed it. Another really good one too is Merit. Just because I love their location, I love their food,
so good,
and I love their space, right? And I mean, thinking from the business perspective, like their branding's on point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they do really well with that. And Tej, the owner there, is just a super nice dude, and he's super personable. And every time we see each other, we chat, and I think that would be like my number two for sure.
Yeah, the environment there.
Not even number two. I would kind of put them on both the same playing field, really, for different reasons, right?
Yeah. The experience at Merit's good. That's where I took my girlfriend on our first date.
Oh, nice. There you go.
We're still
great first date spot. So. Great first date spot. Yeah.
What would be one of your favorite local like restaurants, or maybe recently been?
Oh, dude, Rapscallion. Have you been?
I haven't, but I've heard multiple people.
You know what? It's funny because there's so many different restaurants in Hamilton, and I love so many of them. Like Born and Raised being one is a massive one for me. My wife and I love going there. But Rapscallion is one of those places that has just like never missed for me. And that's kind of like the place that if somebody's coming from Vancouver, like where my wife was from or whatever, and we wanted to take them somewhere, it would be there, right? Their food is just phenomenal. Their staff is great. Their cocktails are awesome. The space is cool. Their patio is huge, right? So that's a really good spot. Born and Raised I love the authenticity behind their menu. Vittorio, during COVID, Vittorio and his mom were like working in the kitchen and like serving tables and stuff like that. And the Italian food is like very authentic there. I grew up in an Italian family, so I'm really particular with where I have Italian food in the city. And I remember it wasn't during COVID, it was probably right after. We had some friends visiting from Vancouver, and we went there, and I had the rigatoni there, and I swear, man, it was like, when you eat something and it like brings you back to this like vivid memory.
Oh yeah.
It like almost creates a picture in your mind, and you're just like, oh my God, right? That's what that plate of pasta did for me. And I remember telling Vittorio that, and he's like, that's like, chefs like work their entire lives to hear that like one thing from
say
somebody.
It's like the best compliment you could get.
Yeah, totally. So it definitely reminded me a lot of my nonna's pasta, which was great. And I think, yeah, those two are like our staples recently.
Cool.
And there's so many others.
Oh yeah, there's tons. Yeah. One of my last questions that I always like to ask everyone is like, what does move local like mean to you when you hear those two words?
Just from a general sense, I think move local for me would be kind of just like diving into your community and making sure that you know who everyone is and what they're all about, and especially from a small kind of business perspective. And for me personally, I love going around talking to different entrepreneurs like yourself. And, you know, we had our apprentices go on to the small business field trip day.
Yeah, that's cool.
And, you know, we had them sit down, and I messaged a few of my buddies who own businesses. And I said, hey, do you mind if we rapid fire questions like that have to do with running a business? And, you know, like that, I feel Hamilton is so unique for that, right? It's one of those cities where it's big when you want it to feel big, but it's very small when you want it to feel very small.
Yeah.
And I think that whole move local perspective, it resonates a lot with Hamilton in its current state, because there's so many opportunities to meet really cool people and visit really cool places that are passion projects of people, right? They're not passion projects of investors. They're not passion projects of massive corporations. It's that person that loves what they do and wants to just share it with the world. And we have a unique opportunity to be able to experience that in the time that we're in Hamilton. And it's not going to be forever, but I think we should definitely take advantage of that.
Love it. If you want to let people know where they can find, you know, your shop, where they can find you, where they can find Instagram, all that stuff.
So we're on George Street between Queen and Hess, 102 George. You can make an appointment with us at www.andiamohamont.com, and we are Andiamo Hamilton on Instagram.
Love it. Dre, thanks so much, man.
Thank you, man.
Super pumped that we finally got to sit down.
Yeah,
and do
finally.
this.
We've been talking about it for a while.
Thank you for tuning in. If you're looking for a new place to get a haircut, have a coffee, have a drink, have good vibes, check out Andiamo. Honestly, I can't say enough about Dre and the people here and what they're doing. So make sure you check it out. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Sweet.
Nice.
Thanks, man.
That was great.
Yeah, awesome. Rock and roll.